now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over. The summer movie season is underway, but which of this year's blockbusters are worth seeing? Some mega hits have already been unleashed. Captain America, Civil War, The Jungle Book. Here to give us his take on what's hot and what shouldn't be at the box office is the film critic for the National Catholic Register, first place winner, incidentally, of Best Regular Column at the Catholic Press Awards this past week, and newly ordained deacon in the Archdiocese of Newark, Stephen Greydanus. Thanks for being with us.
Raymond, it's great to be with you.
Quite a week for you, my friend. Ordination and awards.
Yes, it has been.
The wonders never end over there.
It's been quite a thing. I'm looking forward to just catching my breath this coming weekend.
Okay, well, before we get to that, Stephen, Disney Studios seem to be having a bang-up year thus far. Both Zootopia and The Jungle Book are already huge hits, which brings us to Pixar. Now, this is a division of Disney you wrote an interesting column about recently, about their history. Has Pixar lost its way since being taken over by the mouse?
In some ways it has, probably not financially, but creatively. Before they were bought by Disney, they did almost no sequels except for Toy Story 2. Now they're just producing one sequel after another, and outside the Toy Story franchise, they have yet to produce a single sequel that lives up to the original, which of course brings us to Finding Dory.
Right, and what do you make of Finding Dory? Do you think this is going to return them to their former glory?
Probably not, but I am hoping for something a cut above, say, Monsters University. The film is directed by Andrew Stanton, director of the original Finding Nemo and also of WALL-E. So it could be the first Pixar sequel that is at least somewhere in the ballpark of the original. Although Finding Nemo is a great film, the best father-son animated movie in Hollywood history.
Yeah, no, it's an incredible movie, and again, a high legacy to live up to. What do you make of all this chatter I've been reading in the Hollywood press? There was apparently a shot of two women next to a baby pram, and an octopus is attacking in there, and they're claiming this is a lesbian couple, and some are saying this is the first lesbian couple in a Pixar movie. Now, the producers are saying we didn't ask them. What do you say?
I think that there is so much chatter on this general subject of representation in Hollywood and of representation of homosexuality in particular. People who are activists in this vein really want to see representations on the screen, and they're eager to find them wherever they can. You're going to hear this kind of talk every time an animated family film comes out. We heard it with Frozen. We heard it with How to Train Your Dragon. Sometimes there's a little bit more there than others. But Hollywood and Disney in particular, they're just not ready to put a same-sex couple on the screen. What they are willing to do is put something there that can be interpreted that way if you have a mind to, and that other parents can turn a blind eye to if they want.
Okay, I want to move on to these superhero movies, which I have to confess personally I am finished with. Batman versus Superman.
You're kidding.
Yeah, well, imagine that. Batman versus Superman, Captain America, Civil War. Why should anyone see these movies, Stephen, and why should you take your family to see them?
Well, the answers are going to depend on the franchise. Last week we had Xmen Apocalypse, which I've always thought to be one of the most interesting of these franchises. This isn't the best film in the franchise, but it deals with interesting moral themes, with fear and suspicion and attempts to bridge gaps between people. The Marvel franchise what they're mostly selling is fun and nostalgia. For me, Captain America Civil War gives me the ability to see my favorite superhero, Spider-Man, side by side with all of his friends in the Marvel Universe. I really didn't like Batman versus Superman, and I don't like the whole DC Extended Universe Man of Steel and now upcoming Suicide Squad. I think that director Zack Snyder has put a dark, anti-heroic, kind of Ayn Randian spin on these characters, and I'm just so tired of anti-heroes. I'd like to see more inspiring heroes who are genuinely heroic and virtuous.
I'm tired of grown men running around in tights, frankly. I mean, if they're not reciting Shakespeare, I just don't care at this point. I'm going to be honest. Let's talk for a second, Stephen, about some of these sequels. You mentioned X-Men. This didn't exactly set box office records. There was Alice Through the Looking Glass. We saw the Ninja Turtles again. What else here? The Huntsman. What is holding back?
The Huntsman Winter's War.
Right. So what's holding back these sequels, these reboots?
All of these sequels, with the sole exception of Captain America Civil War, it seems the Marvel Cinematic Universe can do no wrong. All of these sequels have performed disappointingly and sometimes very disappointingly. I think sometimes it's a matter of the originals just having been so ridiculously successful. Is it possible that audiences are finally getting tired of sequels, or are some of them just not that inspired? I think it's a mix of the two, with The Huntsman Winter's War and Alice Through the Looking Glass, and really Ninja Turtles also. These are movies that just had no reason to exist. There's no inspiration behind them, and it's not surprising that they've done poorly at the box office.
Yeah, no, it's just too many reboots. We're this regurgitative culture. We just keep repeating. Now there's a reboot of the Ghostbusters, you know, a female version of the Ghostbusters. Do we really need a female version of the Ghostbusters? I mean, it wasn't like the original was, you know, War and Peace or Citizen Kane.
No, indeed. What I think we need is more films that are driven by female filmmakers, that have female protagonists. There is a very strong bias in what films actually get made, and especially in what films get big budgets, toward male protagonists. And, you know, 50% of the population is female. I have 3 daughters as well as 4 sons. I'd like them to be able to go to the movies and see more women in important positions in movies. And Paul Feig, the writer-director of, or the director of the new Ghostbusters, is one of the few directors in Hollywood who feels really strongly about that.
Relative to that point about female protagonists and women and girls being 50% of the population, which they are, you mentioned a movie before we started, Love and Friendship. Tell us about this movie and why people should give it a look.
Yes, Love and Friendship. This is way off the beaten track of the blockbusters we've been talking about. This is a Jane Austen adaptation by Whit Stillman, and trust me, there are viewers out there for whom the juxtaposition of the names Jane Austen and Whit Stillman is more exciting than Batman and Superman. This is one of Austen's lesser-known works, and Whit Stillman has only produced a handful of films over the last quarter century, but he has an authorial voice like nobody else, and he brings a moral perspective to all of his films: Metropolitan, Barcelona, Last Days of Disco.
Sure.
In this movie, Kate Beckinsale plays a ruthless young widow who's very manipulative and is trying to get the best situation for herself and her daughter. It's a film with a very cynical protagonist, but Stillman brings his typical perspective to it, and I think it's one of the best films of the year so far. I
want to switch gears slightly. 2016 has already been a big year for portrayals of Jesus, stories of faith. We had Risen, The Young Messiah, that were released earlier this year. Of course, this summer, Ben-Hur, Mark Burnett and Roma Downey's movie comes in August. Why the preponderance of faith-based films this year?
They're not all faith-based films. Ben-Hur is an example of a film that started out as a studio film before they brought in Roma Downey and Mark Burnett. Some of them, Risen, I think, is clearly a faith-based film. The Young Messiah, it's somewhere in between. And then you have others that are clearly one or the other. Right. Ewan McGregor played both Jesus and Satan in Last Days in the Desert, which is definitely not a faith-based film. What I think is all of these films, sometimes you get a trend like this that's really just a convergence of streams that are really separate. So you have a director like Rodrigo Garcia, who was interested in the material, and then you've got a property like Ben-Hur, and sometimes all of these things just come together, and you get a year of really amazing Bible films. Another one that's not exactly a Bible film, but deals with some of these same themes, is Hail Caesar from the Coen brothers.
Oh, yeah.
A movie about the making of a Bible film that's got a great theological discussion right in the middle about the nature of Jesus.
Yeah, no, that was an interesting movie. Another film with subtle, I think, a more subtle faith angle is Conjuring 2, which is a sequel to that very successful horror film. It took in $300 million at the box office a few years ago, and it's based on the true story of these paranormal investigators, a Catholic couple, in fact, Ed and Lorraine Warren, who worked a famous case of possession in England in 1977. I know you've seen the movie. It's very intense, certainly not for everybody, but give us a sense of what sets it apart from other films in the horror genre.
Well, when I think of these films, I always think of Roger Ebert's great line about how when it comes to fighting the powers of hell on the big screen, the Catholic Church has the heavy artillery. And some horror films depict that and some films don't. I'm thinking of movies like the original Exorcist, Terrence Fisher's The Devil Rides Out, Scott Derrickson's The Exorcism of Emily Rose. And these two films, The Conjuring and The Conjuring 2, were both written by a pair of brothers who are Christians. The director, James Wan, really knows how to do horror. So they're strong, stylish horror films that have a strong Catholic underpinning, and I enjoyed them both. If anything, the second one has, I think, slightly more strong Catholic cred than the first one.
Finally, congratulations on your recent ordination to the permanent diaconate last weekend. What does that ordination mean to you, and has it changed the way you look upon your work or the way you execute it?
I'm still very new to the diaconate. I've been a deacon now for less than a week, but I have been pursuing this for the last 5 years of my life. So in my formation program, it's something that I've been trying to form my mind and to think from the perspective of diaconal ministry. I would say that it's changed my work, but it's been a slow change more than something that happened suddenly last Saturday, although I will say that the ordination at the Cathedral Basilica of the Sacred Heart in Newark was a powerful spiritual experience, and I've just been kind of living in the shadow of that ever since.
Stephen Greydanus, thanks for being with us. You can catch all of Stephen's reviews at the National Catholic Register at national or ncregister.com or at decentfilms.com. He's also the co-host of Real Faith, which you can catch on net.